evening and welcome to the March 3rd edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe and I'll be serving as the facilitator of this evening's conversation. Thank you so very much for joining us. So whether you are looking at GBN television, listening on GBN radio, or any of our social media platforms, thank you for giving up part of your Monday evening and spending with us. This evening we're looking ahead at the 2025 budget. We're going to do some reflections, of course, as one can anticipate, into the performance within 2024, and then projections of what we can anticipate happening in 2025. I have to say welcome back to a number of my guests, and I do have one newbie on the block, first time on Beyond the Headlines, so probably I should start with him. And Kunta-Kinte, Andall, welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I know it is your first sitting, and happy to have you join this conversation.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And along with him, we have some seasoned BTH participants. I will probably start with I'm scared to say the most senior, but I will. So the most senior, Mr. Christopher Allie, welcome.
Thank you, Colin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jonathan Mitchell, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Dowe. It's a pleasure being here.
And Monty Greenidge.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure being here, and good night to all the listeners.
Excellent. Let's just jump in, and there are a number of things that we saw government implementing in 2024, and we'd just like to get your reflections on those, how they performed, any advice you will give for fine-tuning, etc. But Chris, let me start with you, because we saw a new minimum wage being implemented in January of 2024. What are your thoughts on how this worked? And I know that there was some interpretation as regards to whether everything will go up, will people get fired, etc., etc. 1 year out, the minimum wage.
Well, I think generally, if you look at the positive side, the people who were at the low end of the minimum wage before it got changed, I know what their government have put in. I think the livable wage now is $1,500, regardless of what occupation you're in. So that would have moved from $60 a day to $1,500. So it's a substantial increase for the people in those categories. That's a positive side. Of course, on the negative side, you have instances where small shop owners who used to hire a person with themselves can't afford a person because they can't pay $1,500 a month for the person. In geriatric care, you will have the same thing. Where you could have had 2 caregivers, now you could only afford 1. So there have been some erosion in terms of people once the minimum wage became effective, and that's on the negative side. But generally, when you look at the cost to the private sector and the cost for security services, for example, that went up, and some businesses have chosen to go with digital forms of security, monitoring, camera systems, and so on and so forth, and they will cut back on the physical in-person security. So you have those instances that has matured in the year, and you see some of that erosion happening. But I think the biggest mistake, in my view, my personal view, is that when you do minimum wage by category, that is, in my view, not of the right way to do it. The country must set a minimum wage across the board, regardless of whether you're a carpenter or mason, whether you're A class, B class, or C class. Let your qualification determine how much I pay you once I set a minimum wage. So based on your experience and your expertise, you come into me and I say, okay, I think you could do this better than somebody else. I'll move your wage accordingly.
Right. And
you let that go through the private sector and the country, so that it determines people's ability to do quality work, on time work, and so on, and have a general minimum wage set regardless of class of.
So you're saying that a living wage is a living wage regardless of what trade you apply?
Correct. Correct. So having these categories and so on, we went in the whole thing, and of course we can't wait 10 and 12 years to do minimum wage. It must be done in a shorter cycle because it creates too much magnitude and difference for it. So those would be my initial thoughts on it.
Okay. Anything on minimum wage? One of the other things that we saw taking place was the pension reform bill. But anything, gentlemen?
Well, I would like to speak to that of the minimum wage, because when we speak to that of minimum wage, it speaks to more disposable income for the average man and woman, right? And I think that always augurs well for any economy. We live in a time when we have no control over some of the prices we see on the supermarket shelves, right? And in order for somebody, as you say, a livable wage, just to be able to pay their bills, whether it's electricity, whether it's to buy food to put on the table for their children and themselves, it is important that these things be put into place, because without that you have people then living below the standard and falling short, and then you start getting into the areas of eating and being malnourished because you're not eating right. Yeah? So I want to say hats off to that initiative. I think it was a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kunta-Kinte, two things. One, you can touch on the minimum wage, but the pension reform bill was also something that was enacted during the last year.
Yeah, I think when it comes to minimum wage, the idea I want to focus on is prices always transfer. It's kind of like the law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just passes from one form to another. In the case of economics, you have the prices that if you essentially minimum wage, raising the minimum wage is raising the price of labor for the private sector or even the public sector. So as long as you raise the price of labor, someone is going to look to a cost cut. And Mr. Allie said it, private sector was kind of scrambling to cut costs, and what that translates to in the real world is people being cut from positions. And I think that's inescapable. But you might consider it to be a necessary evil. I hope I'm not being unempathetic, but that's a negative externality that you must consider from an economics perspective. As it relates to the younger people, on the lower side of the spectrum, it was a significant boon for them. The question is, if they're raising the prices, is it consistent with price increases? That is, cost plus inflation, supply push inflation, like all of these aspects that are putting pressures on people's consumption patterns. How is that interacting and moderating those relationships? And I think we need to consider that, because people's consumption patterns does not necessarily, or it may not necessitate a minimum wage increase. And what I mean by that is people may be buying things that they don't really need. Of course, when you look at the basket of goods, government is going to make sure that those are things that people want and need, but consumption patterns vary, and it's really idiosyncratic as it relates to our culture. As it relates to the pension reform bill, my thoughts on that are simple. Grenada seems to be staring down a social security crisis. We have a declining fertility rate. We have record high levels youth unemployment, 23% as of 2024, and we also have an aging population. When you put that triad, that trifecta, what you get is a not so good picture for the social security of Grenada. Therefore, a pension reform was necessary. It should have been done years ago. I'm thankful that they did it. My concern going forward is how do we effectively manage, administrate, and tweak that as it relates to our youth unemployment, which, by the way, our working population are high. It's really high compared to our non-working population, or the people going out of the workforce. So there are a few things people can do, government can do. Increase the retirement age, or increase the retirement age in a discretionary manner, so you don't have to go out at 65, but you could. We saw that going on. You could work on youth unemployment and employ people, or you could increase the age at which people come out of school. And so I think they have tried to do a few of those things, and I guess we're going to see the effects in a few decades or a few years.
Okay. If we increase the age, we have to increase the economy to increase the employable people. And hence, that's part of the challenge in terms of growing the economy so we can absorb even more. And even as you said, in increasing the minimum wage, the cost of employment increases to the business owner. But if there's an expansion of the economy, then those individuals can be impacted. Jonathan, from a youth perspective, I know you'll be advocating and will have to advocate and wrestle with a number of these issues. Your thoughts, minimum wage, your thoughts, pension reform?
Well, I think it was a great initiative in terms of the minimum wage. Many of the youths were clamoring for increase in their salary. Carpenters, masons, vocational skills, and across the board, which I think is a great initiative. And I think it's a step in the right direction. Definitely,
we've seen over the years that, inflation, goods and services, they're becoming more expensive. And therefore, it's a step in the right direction. On the pension reform bill, there are many individuals who will say, no, I think you'll be good this way, you'll be good that way. But to cap it all off, I think we as individuals should think forward-minded. And when we think forward-minded, we look at our history and we look at where we're going. Then we can diversify our economy, diversify our nation, so that we can push forward and actually cater to our citizens.
Chris, one of the other things that we saw was increase in compensation for parliamentarians, and also an allotment of $10,000 per month for MPs to take care of their constituencies. You sat in Parliament as a senator for a number of years. You got all of probably $600 for your efforts, and probably have now retired with a grand pension of $200 and something a month from NIS. What are your thoughts on these increases, and is it a worthwhile investment and good for our democracy?
I think parliamentarians are woefully underpaid, and those increases is just, as a young man said, a step in the right direction for parliamentarians. A lot of parliamentarians leave Parliament, whether it's the upper or lower house, and they go into some abject poverty because their pension is $300 a month. Ridiculous. So, I mean, that is showing, in my view, no respect and any sort of value for the contributions these people would have made to the country. Right. So we really needed to adjust that. So I think that's a positive thing. On the pension, though, I think one of the things we need to understand, pension was always there for government employees, always. The problem is it was 100% funded by the government. Right. This new pension is contributory. And how you fund a pension to pay people many years ahead or in the future is the key. And that is the problem. And our unions don't push the right narrative. When you contribute 3 or 5%, employees look at it as a deduction in their salary, not as an investment. Right? And as a result, they come to counter now through their wage negotiation to get back that 3 or 5%. And that is not how it must be looked at. It must be looked at as an investment in what you're doing, and you may have to change what you do with your expenses and so on to facilitate it. But you cannot have a country as Grenada, as small as we are, going forward with a pension arrangement that is unfunded. Right. Because any day the government has some major expenses to pay in some other category, you won't get paid as a pensioner, because it's unfunded. Right. And that is what the average man needs to understand. NIS is going through a similar thing. They have moved the wage adjusted to 65. They have increased as of 1st of January, your contribution have increased. So in order to settle the scheme so that pensioners, when they get to the age of 65, you could get your monies without any. So
how do we change? Because NIS is saying that we need to move towards 65, and they're moving towards 65. Are employers, including government, keeping up with this move?
Employers, in my view, will have little choice to go to 65, because you normally try to harmonize with what the national country's retirement age is. Excuse me. In the U.S., there's really no retirement age, You could reach 60, 65, but once you're still able to work, you could go for as long as you are, because they have the 401k, right, which matures in a different kind of cycle. But we don't have that here. So we limit, and you say up to 65 or up to 60 or whatever the case may be. And even though you reach 65 and you get your thing from NIS, you could continue to work if you feel you could handle a workload. And of course, you wouldn't be paying NIS or a paltry amount. But the point is, some people may reach that age, because when you look at your NIS contribution based on your last salary, you might be getting 40% of your last salary or less.
Right.
So some of us can't live on that, and based on our debt load and our personal issues, we have to find another work.
Has government moved their retirement age, or it's still at 60? And is this a constitutional issue in terms of the retirement age of our government employees being 60?
Well,
and how do we adjust that?
Remember, government have this 26 and 2/3, where you could, once you make that, you could take your retirement.
Right.
And you will get NIS plus gratuity, what they're giving you, plus whatever they have in this scheme for you. So they have that, so you don't have to wait till 65. Once you make 26 and 2/3 years, you're good.
Yes, but what I'm asking of the employee who may have made 26 and 2/3 or not, and comes to age 60, what is the government process to adjust their retirement age upwards in keeping with the NIS mandate?
Well, I'm not sure we know what that is yet, because at 60, remember, you can't retire early on the NIS now.
Right.
If you hit 60 and the age is 65, you have to wait. As you move to 61, it goes to 62 until you reach 60.
You have to wait until you catch up with the age to receive the benefits.
Correct.
Right.
So that will apply to government employees as well. But their own internal 100% funded pension arrangement is going to give them a different construct. And that in itself poses a pressure on government, how they're funding that for all the employees who don't meet those who contribute.
Right.
So that is why the law that was enacted recently tried to look at how you could manipulate that and formulate that. But right now, the biggest expense for government is salaries and wages.
Right.
Government in 2024 spent $328.3 million, or 8.6% of GDP.
Right.
As a recurrent expenditure. And in 2025, that's going to move higher because you have the 5% they gave in salaries and negotiations. You have the pension issues that come in, and you have other issues where they're rationalizing people onto the established system in the government. So their wage bill for 2025 is going to significantly increase.
Let me ask you this, because you're saying it's 8-point-something% of GDP. Does that take into account those who are unestablished workers, workers who are on contract, etc.? Because our actual payment of individuals and salaries might be more.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you were to involve, let's take a simple example of the guys who cut bush on the side of the road, the bushers. Their minimum wage now is $1,500. You cannot pay them less. Before it was 60 or whatever dollars a day, and then they're done. Even though the day was for them was 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
But the point is, no, you can't do that. Government have to pay them at least $1,500. So for government, the increase in those things is going to be significant. Let me see if I can pull up some data here for you, Colin. The salaries and wages part for 2025. Total recurrent, let me see, I'll get it for you, just give me a second. But, right, the current expenditure. First, increased employee compensation due to the regularization of employees, estimated at $30 million. 5% salary increase for 2025, agreed with public, estimated at $15 million. Pay parity adjustments for police officers, estimated at $6.5 million. And pensions obligation, including past credit due under the new public service pension plan, estimated at $12.9. If you were to add that up,
that's $63 million
extra.
Yes.
That coming on the recurrent side of the budget.
Okay.
Expenditure.
All right. One of the other things that I want us to discuss, that government spoke of a tax amnesty, getting people into compliance. There were 6,000 plus people coming on board 2023. We assume that increased, or the compliance certainly increased in 2024. There was also a new tax administration regime that was announced, which required tax clearance certificates in order to do business with government and to get government contracts. Are you aware if this was enacted at all?
As far as I know, it was.
It was? It
was. And you need to, if you're going and apply for a government contract, you need to show that you have clearance, not only from Inland Revenue, but from NIS as well, right? So that you're clear and you're not owing and you're not in arrears or whatever the case may be. So that is part of, if you're a business and applying for, say, a work permit, you have to supply that as well to the government, showing that you're compliant. So there are these rules and regulations that have been introduced introduced into the system so that people could, and rightfully so, you can't come and ask for a contract to gain in revenues or profits or whatever the case and not paying your fair share of your tax as required by law.
And this is something that we should insist on as citizens. One can't be owing $11 million in taxes and still want government contracts.
Yes, I think that's a fear. And it's even, I think that extends to certain benefits from government as well, because I don't want to jump the gun, and through agencies as GOCA, if you have to get funding, whether it's through vouchers or through loans or grants, you must be compliant with NIS, you must be compliant with the IRD, right? Before you can qualify for that kind of a financial assistance. So I think it's fair.
Okay. Yeah. The government had a number of themes in 2024, and I'd just like us to briefly just reflect on some of the areas and the performance there. Human development was one of the themes. So there was human development, there was promoting economic growth and job creation, there was good governance, there was climate resilience, environmental sustainability, and renewable energy. Anyone wants to take on any of those?
I definitely want to speak on human development. The reason why, because my brother here, you could see we were speaking in the lobby, and we were speaking to that of transformation. And I think we underestimate how important transformation, the connection between human resources and developing our national human resources. And I always advocate that's the only way you would have true transformation. You know, we could look at any technology, let's just use an example. We could build a big stadium that has all the technologies, right? But if we don't have people trained to be able to maintain these technologies and to make sure it's always working and it's at its optimum, then you're spinning top in mud. Then you still have to source external employees or so, or bring in whoever it is to come and rebuild, whether it's a stadium or to repair it. So I believe the trust in focusing on human resources and human development is a very important factor, and I see it as it is a true ingredient of what I call transformation. Yeah, I just needed to make that point, because too often we look at development as concrete and infrastructure, but without that support from your human resource, you're spinning top in mud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kunta-Kinte, any?
Yeah, of course. I think human development is the core of any development in a country, especially when you're talking about government performance. I think one of the metrics, and this is part of my research in doing government performance, is how do we measure government performance as a country? Is it by economic metrics? Real GDP increased by 3.9%, sustained economic growth. Or are we going to say that our workers are knowledge-based workers? And not just that, we have a society that we are proud of. And one of the things when I was reviewing the budget of 2024, I was considering, okay, how is it related to the NSDP? That's one of the things that I'm so concerned about, the National Sustainable Development Plan. Do our citizens know about that? Vision 2035, how does it relate to that? And human resource development is absolutely essential. I'm talking about skills, training, development, not just by increasing prices, or as we like to say colloquially, putting money in the poor man's hand, but an economist differentiate between these two things, welfare and well-being. The question is, how do we balance those? And I think in the budget there was sufficient fiscal space given to handle welfare, but I'm thinking about, okay, how are we tackling well-being? It's not just about giving people stuff, but providing the environment, providing the facilities so that people have access to things. And I think one of the economic drivers that we're going to see, even the IMF, the World Bank, the UN have touted this as the most important indicator, is the human development indicators.
Right.
So we need to focus on these, and we need to aggressively tackle these human development indicators so that we have true economic development and not just nominal economic growth.
Jonathan, welfare versus well-being. Your thoughts?
I could speak to the human capacity building aspect in terms of vocational trainings across the board, such as the Import program, for example. I think it's great initiatives invented, but how are they able to compete on a national and regional level? For example, you're giving me a certificate of participation or just a certificate of completion. How can I take that and compete on an international or regional level across the board? Just bring it here, bring the certificate here and say, well, I completed this course, but would it get your foot in the door, I would say. So I think more funding should be geared towards building the human capacity and knowledge base in terms of helping it to be regional instead of just local, or maybe say.
You seem to be suggesting a greater role for the Greater National Training Agency,
exactly.
Certifications, documentations of these skills, so that the skills can be portable, because participation doesn't say that there was knowledge transfer.
Exactly.
Right? So we certainly would want to know that the individual would have gained knowledge and can apply.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Chris?
I am more critical. Sorry, young people.
That's okay.
The latest World Bank report was heavily critical of the training, our school system and training in the CARICOM in particular.
Right.
And they say what we're doing is totally out of whack as what is required. Right, that's the first thing I want to start on. The second thing is our literacy rate thing, numeracy and critical thing is absent.
Right.
We are the lowest end of the rug, 30-something%, and so on. So the question to you young people is how you transforming that to get yourselves better prepared to come in my workplace. I have young people come in my workplace, don't have a clue about critical thinking. They don't know if something varies, how to deal with it. And that is not what I want. I need you to function efficiently. And then let's get to the attitude to work. The attitude to work by our young people, and not only blaming young people, but general persons, is sour in Grenada. You are coming to work only for money and not really production and productivity. And that is, which one of us gets up in the mirror and look at yourself in the mirror and say, listen boy, what am I contributing today to my workplace or my country? We don't do that. It's always the other way around. What is it I'm supposed to get from the workplace or the country so that we could move our country forward or not? Not all young people are bad, don't get me wrong. I have a group of young people in my establishment that are excellent workers. They do what they have to do, they work, come to work on time, they dress appropriately, they have the right attitude to service and so on. But generally in our country, we have a problem with attitude to work. 90% of the people that you see on the block is men. They just sit whole day, they may cook, they may beg for some money to put on a pot, they do nothing. Who are working in our country are women. Look at our schools, look at our universities, look at the professions. 80% of what used to be men, women taking it. Because women have a need to go to work, whatever that need comes from. So we have a problem in our country with how we regulate and change. If you want to use the word transform, how do we transform that mental capacity to say to our men, because construction and agriculture in our country suffers the most from labor shortages. And I tell the Prime Minister already, I believe a short-term fix to this, get rid of work permits. That's a waste of time. Bringing people from Venezuela, bringing people from Trinidad, come in industries where we don't want to work and show them how to work. And then you're going to see probably a change in attitude. But that's a low-hanging fruit in a short term. We need to develop, all our countries have to go into that, because we're just not working.
All right.
But just to say something on what Mr. Allie, the point he just made, I think what he's describing is a larger problem, which is a social issue, and and I think the emphasis needs to put in more social issues for social programs, because I would say that what you're discussing there goes way back to the home and parenting, right? And I'm not sure that legislation could fix that. It's about policy, and maybe we're talking education and re-education, and it's a whole. But I wanted to make an additional point, because you made reference to GDP and so, and with education and or human resources, what I'm seeing happening right now is that we have had a sector right, of people, whether we would call it craft or people that just used to just do something on the side, right, whether it's to make juice or whatever the case may be. And the programs that I'm seeing to re-educate these people and to make these people come up to speed, right, it now provides the platform for us to create a new economy. A new economy which would contribute to the GDP. So when you're talking about a man that just selling juice, or the young lady that making soap up in a rural area, or making candle, that now she's now equipped to now market that business and make that business that she no longer defined by geography, and she could export that product. Now we're talking about real development. So I don't want it being passed that those initiatives to educate these people and it helps to create a whole new economy that can only augur well for our country.
There's a difference between education and certification. And these young people here will understand that. They are highly certified people. There's a difference between being certified, Colin knows that well in education, and being educated. Education is not about certification only and getting your foot in the door. It's about your attitude to the work and to your colleagues when you come in the environment, and how you observe, punctuality, how you dress. All of that is education, not necessarily certification. And that is the difference.
Yes, I don't disagree.
The small shop people are making pepper and juice and so on. They're educated because they know what's happening on the ground in terms of how to sell their product and why there's a need. And the certification comes in what they produce and the quality of what they produce and to make it consistent. That is a certification that has to marry with education. But the education of your attitude to work is where I am getting at.
So what I'm hearing is that the innovation grant, which is what you referred to there, Eddie, that that government has embarked upon, is a good thing.
Yes.
But we need to be holistic in the development of our people.
Yes.
So getting the skills, one thing. Having the right attitude to be competitive is another.
Yeah.
And is that whole picture that would drive the economic development.
Of course.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our first break. So we'll have a commercial break and we'll continue with the discussions right after this.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue. Available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Angie, don't you know that you should not fly kites near electrical poles and wires? You should only fly it in open areas. If the kite gets stuck, it can cause power outages throughout the village.
Then I'll just pull it down, Johnny. Simple.
No, you shouldn't do that. You can get shocked. You should call Greenidge at 237 and they will come and help.
Alright.
Greenidge, energizing our Grenada.
Get value you'll love only at Quartz. With huge savings on select mattresses, mobile phones, and TVs. You'll also love our new arrivals in furniture and appliances. Plus, when you shop, get a chance to win great prizes. So come in, shop today, and pay later with Quartz Ready Finance. Get value you'll love only at Quartz. Bringing value home. Offer ends February 24, 2025. See store for details.
Unlocking opportunities, Excel leads the way in digital advancement every single day. Fair internet access for all to share. Transparent billing with consumer care. Excel through the EC bill, safeguarding our rights. Net neutrality, consumer protection shining bright. Mobile number portability available to you. Switch providers seamlessly. Keep the number true. Excel through the EC bill, promoting fair play in the digital world. Every single day, affordable services are important for all. Through the EC bill, there'll be progress overall. Ectel and the NTRCs connecting our communities.
Ectel and the NTRCs digitally transforming our space together.
Right Choice Promotions in association with Investment Migration Agency of Grenada, together with Ariza Credit Union, presents the inaugural Virgin Parish Relay Meet. This is the real mini Olympics, Saturday, March 8th. Lassa Just Playing Field in St. David. Relay action featuring the top clubs and schools from across Grenada, competing for cash prizes and more. Come see the nation's best athletes as they prepare for Intercall and Carifta Games 2025. First call to action is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, featuring live entertainment and excitement in the tug-of-war competition. Admission $10 adults, $5 children. Come to Virgin Parish, St. David on Saturday, March 8th for the Virgin Parish Relay Meet. Come share in the excitement and speed and see you there.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We are tackling budget cycle 2025, looking forward, but doing some reflecting prior. Health and wellness, this was one of the major themes of government. And what are your thoughts on the investment made in health and wellness in 2024 and some of the things you'd like to see in 2025? We saw the stipend to nurses and doctors being maintained. There were conversations about the new hospital, and of course within that budget presentation with some timelines was the national health insurance, all spoken of. What are your thoughts as you reflect on what we have accomplished and where we still need to go?
So I would answer this question more so as a father of 3 children and a wife. Right?
You're not the father of the wife. So you're a father of 3 children
and a wife,
and you're a husband.
Yes, right. I'm just saying that.
Because I just trying for you to go back home in peace. You know?
Yes. So, as a parent, one of the things that always, is a burning issue is to make sure the safety and security of your family, your loved ones, being able for them to be able to get quality health care, right? And not worry about going into bankruptcy in the process, right? So I would say healthcare still remains a work in progress. I believe in being fair. I think there's still some ways to go. Where I see, because we have to connect the dots, healthcare and health and wellness has a lot to do with the way we eat, just the same. And that's where agriculture comes in, right? So I see some more investment needs to be put into the areas of agriculture. Put in investment in the context that when I go to the market, right, I don't feel as though everything in the market, if you've been to the market in recent times, you could pick up the smallest bag of limes or okra, is $5. That seems to be the base price and up. So even if you want,
I need you to shop for me because that's not my base price.
That's not your base. So that means you're going into the jacket when you're going and shop. Because when you go and you want your family to eat healthy and to eat well, it is expensive to eat healthy. But gone are the days when you went to the market. That is where the average person went to the market to get a nice deal on a sweet potato or this, a callaloo, and whatever it is. It is no longer the case. Sometimes they're getting cheaper so-called greens and so in the supermarket, right? So some emphasis need to be put on that to bring down the prices, right, of what we consider healthy food, and I think that will translate into healthcare, because then it will be less of a burden on the state, right? So, as I say, it's still a work in progress, but I just wanted to speak to that from the perspective as a father and as a husband.
Kunta-Kinte?
Of course, health and wellness has always been the priority of the small island developing states. I remember in the revolution, not that I was there, but sloganization is so important. Eat what you grow, grow what you eat. Idle lands for idle hands. These initiatives ensured that the population focused on our community development. And these things are inextricably linked. When he spoke about agriculture sector and the health sector, they're inextricably linked. You cannot separate the two. So if you're not making commensurate investments in agriculture and agro-processing and value added, all those things, and incentivizing local production, then how is it that you're going to get a healthy, wealthy, prosperous nation? I don't see how that is possible. Notwithstanding, some investments have been made for the medical tourism, at least that's what the government explicitly stated. And of course you have the national health insurance, which seems to be geared to targeting the nationals. But my concern, as always, is how is that going to be sustainable? How is that going to be rolled out over a period of, let's say, 20 to 50 years?
Well, we had a $3.5 million budgeted for the NIH, but it was recently announced that the contract was cancelled. So I don't know if we're starting over. I don't know the point from which we're starting.
Yes.
I think we all agree that this is an important initiative that must take place.
It's important.
But here we are.
Yes, and I think, the recognition that we need a national health insurance is good enough, but the question is why? Why, when we have so many lifestyle chronic diseases just, being caught up by our population, it is necessarily so that we must address and publicly educate our citizenry of the basic tenets: eat what you grow, grow what you eat. But at the same time, it cannot be costing an arm and a leg for you to eat what you grow and grow what you eat. And that's where my position is.
Any other thoughts on this one?
Well, NHI has been a failure so far. The new budget is proposing $2.4 million extra to put in 2025 for NHI to come off the ground. We don't have a national health insurance. We have a lot of talk and a lot of
we've been talking since about 2011, 2012, or thereabouts.
And nothing has happened in NHI. And now we put in more money into NHI. But my friend in the NMD, you have touched it where it is. It's not only about eating right, growing what you eat, and so on. You have to understand the influence of media on our people. We on social media, we on all kind of things, and they push things to us that GMO foods, for example, you can't buy a tomato. The other day, lettuce was selling for $40 for a lettuce when we were in the dry season, right? You can't get tomatoes that are not genetically engineered. You can't get yam that are not genetically engineered. So we have to make a decision how we plan to grow what we eat and eat what we grow, because it's not healthy as you think. You understand? Because what the guys are doing is making sure that their industry, you can't plant corn from corn again. Right? Long ago when you had dry corn and you dry it, you take some seeds, you hold it for the next season. You can't do that again. That don't exist. So we have to take a decision as a country and as a people where we want to be. And if agriculture and how we market agriculture, how much are your colleagues as a young person in agriculture? Tell me how much in your school group that you graduate with in agriculture.
About modest 10.
Modest 10. And your class was what size?
About 100 and something.
Right.
About 10%.
So 10%. And that's the point I'm making. We don't bring science into agriculture. So when we do those rooms, those they call it greenhouses, right? You bring the soil up. You control the conditions. We're not hearing our government pushing that to the young people. Agriculture in the US is millions of dollars for families. Families that get into agriculture don't ever leave it. because you must eat.
But it's also heavily subsidized, something that we don't recognize.
Yes,
precisely.
and the thing is, I'm not sure we are in a position to heavily subsidize agriculture, especially when you look at the legal framework of the WTO with subsidies. We just can't compete, and be that as it may, it still remains. The point still remains that yes, we need to find a way to solve the issue. But I think at the end of the day, like if we are saying that or we don't want to acknowledge the strides that have been taken, for example, just the other day a couple of farmers received farming equipment, right, which totaled a few million, I don't remember. But at the end of the day, it's like what are we capable of? What fiscal space do we have, and how can we use that to have the prioritization that's needed? I think that's really the question. And if indeed we prioritize health and wellness, then let's funnel it into health, wellness, agriculture. But it calls on the powers that be to explicitly let us know that these are our prioritization areas and have governance structures in place where we can hold them accountable. But as far as I have seen, I think there have been certain steps being taken towards empowering people, at least as it relates to some form of agro-processing, farmers.
We had the importation, for example, of animals, which were then distributed, which is the livestock, which is a good thing. One of the things that certainly our poultry farmers have been complaining about is the cost of feed. So how do we deal with the likes of a Caribbean Agro to make sure that the inputs into agriculture is reducing costs, which would then translate into us getting cheaper, meals, whether we're talking about the meats or the agricultural products in terms of the produce, etc.
Let me deal with Kunta-Kinte on this issue. We, as a people, do not insist on what we do and what we need for ourselves, what we need. Take, for example, I'll give you an example with fisheries. We just opened a brand new facility in Subies, right? We have open facilities right around the country, Goa, Victoria, St. Andrews. We have lovely fishing jetties and ice makers and so on. How much of us put a processing plant in the back? We go to fish. When we go to fish and we catch tuna, the primary tuna catch is sold outside. Great. We have good monies and foreign exchange. The secondary one, what we do with the secondary one, we send it to the fish shops and we cut it up to sell us $8 and $10 a pound. How much of it go into processing and put it in that canned tuna? None. And previous governments, this government, and have never gone to the Japanese and these people who given us and say, guys, we don't want a jetty and a ice house anymore. Give me a processing plant. We don't insist, and don't talk about WTO, that is joke. Bilaterals happen every time between countries that break WTO. WTO is a waste of time now. You could say what they want, but bilaterals now, all countries breaking the WTO because it doesn't facilitate a productive sector in your country and for your people and to protect your people. Don't let them fool you with that. And at the end of the day, we as a country and as a people need to insist. If our government go to Japan and say, what, we want you to give us the money, we have the money, show us, give us the technology and we go do it, and the training. That's all we want. And our people would develop it. We making saltfish out of fish since in the revolution. Right? You remember? We had a special shark, Baba. Right. We making cornfish. You don't even know when cornfish come. You're a young man. Cornfish is a big thing for us in the country. We use bonita and other things as special for cornfish. Cornfish, in my view, tastes better than saltfish because we don't know where they're getting the saltfish and what they're doing. Why we can't promote these industries? That don't require millions of dollars from our people. And that is healthier to us, as what you're saying.
Yeah, health is wellness.
Right, health is wellness. And what you eat, we have to change what we do up here. Education is part of it, don't get me wrong. Because the only way you could get people to eat what you grow is to change their taste. Instead of going on the thing and buy cornflakes and one of them frosted flakes and all of that. Yeah. What's wrong in making corn porridge? What's wrong in making oats porridge?
So would you so would you be supportive though of some of these things that you just point out there, like the not to call, because I don't want too many body say I'm calling their brands, right? But some of these these things that is not good for human consumption, maybe to be taxed much higher as a deterrent.
But we have taxes as it relates to sugary drinks and all that.
And that has been an intervention in terms of the increase in taxes for those that will predispose us or will take advantage of our predisposition to like diabetes, etc. But coming with that, what I'm hearing from you, Monty, from Chris, and likewise from Kunta-Kinte earlier, is that we also need to change the mindset.
Exactly.
Because the demand is not inflexible. So you increase the price of cornflakes and no, I'm paying more for cornflakes, I just pay more for cornflakes. What you have not done is address my taste for cornflakes and my recognition that I can get this probably better health value for something at lower cost, and then I have other monies that I can spend on other things.
So the question of, it's in economics, is the price elasticity of demand. As Grenadians, certain things will just never go out of our budget. We always gonna buy a little bit of Coke, a little bit of sugary drinks, because it's almost as if it's in our national consciousness to need those things. A little chicken and chips, Other enterprises and franchises came in Grenada and failed because we love, certain fried chicken and all of that.
We eat chicken. There's no side step in that.
We love and eat chicken. And so the question is, the chips, exactly. And so we have to have a national consciousness shift, and this is part of my research too. National consciousness is linked to GDP, and it's not obvious. But if we change the way we think, if we change the way Grenadians think about self-interest, if we change the way we consider eating and consuming and living and dieting and all of that, we're going to get where we need to go. But I think as it relates to, just to push back a little on the WTO, I think it has a brilliant framework in dispute resolution, all of the annexes. The issue really is that we do not have the space and the wiggle room as a small island developing state to really leverage multilateralism. That's the issue. There is space made for us to benefit. The question is, as CARICOM, do we come together and do we leverage our regional integrative movement to increase our bargaining power? Right. But it is there.
All right. Go ahead.
Just to add to what he's saying, we tend to think of health as just eating, but there's a style, an art, as any other craft. There's an art to the way we eat. For example, we will eat pilau, for example. We just eat pilau, chicken, and a coleslaw. Whereas the other components, in terms of the nutritional value, we don't have the other components supporting. So therefore, there will be a lack in nutrition in other areas, and we're under-nutritionalized.
So you're belly full, but you're under-nutritionalized.
And that's where wellness comes in. Because in order to be nutritionalized, you have to be well we can grow what you eat, but eat what you grow. For example, most of us are sedentary workers right now. We're sitting. Most of us are sitting. So we cannot eat the yams and the whole pile of sweet potato we used to eat before, because our foreparents used to be more active than us, right? So there should be shifts in our diet, how we consume food, what we should eat, and that's where the greater nutrition food and council comes in, right? Planning our diets and how we should really emphasize the point of nourishment.
And what we're saying, because we are speaking about the budget, there needs to be some investment in this educational thrust to ensure that we promote healthier lifestyles, we eat healthier, and that well-being aspect is taken care of, which would reduce on our spend on medications, etc., which we can channel elsewhere.
That was a question I was just going to ask you. Is it that we should put more money into more social programs with regards to re-educating from a family standpoint, because to me that's where it begins, right? As a mother and father in a household, remember they have to make a decision when they put in food on the table.
And when chicken is $17 per pound for local chicken. I'm sorry.
No, it's crazy.
Yes, I know that the chicken imported might be 8 years old, but the decision made by the family is $5 a pound versus $17 a pound. What are they to do?
It's a dollar and cents issue. I go to the supermarket all the time and I walk towards the local chicken. They even have it nicely packaged now, local chicken. But when I watch at the price, I can't afford that if I have to buy chicken for the week. you know much that so you end up going back to the chicken they imported.
Local chicken is $6.50 a pound. Let's say $17. Let me just tell you. But outside of that,
it depends on what cut you're taking.
No, you can get a whole chicken at $6.50 a pound.
And all right,
based on that. I'm telling you, fact.
We'll take pictures.
I just bought it.
We'll take pictures.
Yeah, but you're correct about the balance between what you could afford and what is healthy eating. And because of our sedentary lifestyle, we need to change the construct. So, a Sunday meal, our parents and so on used to be pie, rice and peas, yam, bulgur, fig. And when you count that plate have 5 or 6 starches. And you're hardly seeing lettuce, tomato, cabbage, and those sort of things. We now need to say, okay, 1 starch, salad, meat. But we don't do that. And for the average man, that may be hard to do because they're looking for a belly full. So they will buy the back and neck, they will buy the wings, right? And they will mix that with yam and bulgur and dasheen, that fills the stomach. And that's it. They're satisfied.
But undernourished.
And undernourished. And how you transform that thinking to a healthier lifestyle and balancing your budget is the challenge. And that is where our people have to understand that when they go to work, you cannot divorce wellness from exercise. And we do exercise as before. Right? So if you're exercising, your wellness is compromised to some degree. Hence the NCD's phenomenal rise in the Caribbean. Because we go to repatriation and they tell us, they feed us salt meat for years, hypertension. We were sugarcane countries for years, molasses, sugar. So, and then they tell us, go dig yam, plant dasheen, plant stania, eat that, you were satisfied. That's why we have been acculturaized. We have to change that now because they tell us coconut oil is the worst thing in cholesterol, now is the best thing. You can't buy a bottle of coconut oil. You see the marketing I'm talking about? Right.
When it comes to education, we saw a number of things. So we have free tuition, TAMCC as well as NULO moved to the school age up to just about 18. And how do we see this contributing to our national development?
Well, let me start off. I have a daughter that's in Form 5 that will be scheduled to be international college soon. So I could say that I am happy as a father that now they have now removed that element, so it makes it more affordable for parents, because it's not just the tuition. You also have to think about books and all these different things that comes with it, the uniform. And I think it's a good initiative. I know before there was the school book program, and because I have another daughter going into school, what I would like to see is that they should try to start getting some more books into the system, because all the books that has been there is just the same books being reused. I'm not, most of the times you see there's just old books or so, or maybe some covers on it. So that would be a good initiative in my opinion, and I'm just speaking for disposable income, because if I now don't have to buy school books and I don't have to pay a tuition, there is more money that I could go in towards the same healthy eating that we're talking about and healthy lifestyle.
Jonathan?
But is the tuition essentially free? Because if you're a part-time student at TAMCC, you have to pay your tuition. So it's not entirely free.
Right.
And just to address the book issue, I've heard talks of e-books in a sense, but I haven't heard anything about it coming to fruition.
Right.
So that's one of the areas I think we'll move to in terms of the books and e-learning.
Okay.
You have time to move. You have to do it now. None of your daughters or your children must go to TAMCC with a bag of books on their back. That is a waste of time. You have e-learning, you have an iPad like I have here. You have schools, private schools in Grenada doing that right now.
Yes.
No books. You have your iPad, they send you your homework via the portal.
Right.
You do your homework, you upload it. Your parents can look and see what you're doing. No books. right? Child goes to work with an iPad, child goes to school with an iPad, his or her iPad, and that is where we have to go, and we don't have time to wait. This thing about tuition, TAMCC must be given money for tuition because they have teachers to pay. They have a school to maintain, but the books part and all of that needs to be eliminated. No, we can't wait 5 years. Shaper are doing it right now. Shaper have just put smart boards in all their classes, right? And teachers have to relearn how to give work and how they do work and how they teach, right? If Shaper could do it, why we can't do it in all the secondary schools? And that is where government have to go.
So is that a government initiative what Shaper is, or that's a Shaper initiative?
Shaper initiative, right? And financed by private sector companies and alumni, right? And when you look at that, they even have an EV bus that they're taking students when they reach a certain place and they can't get to where Shaper is. Bringing them for when the bus drop them and an EV bus, right? We have to think differently, and we don't have time. The World Bank just told us we don't have time. With AI coming and all the challenges AI is going to bring to us and how we think and we train ourselves is going to be key to what happens in the education sector and our children who are not literate, who are not numerate, and are not critical thinkers. It has to change. No.
All right. Well, it's time for second break, final break. So, viewers and listeners, we'll be right back.
Angie, don't you know that you should not fly kites near electrical poles and wires? You should only fly it in open areas. If the kite gets stuck, it can cause power outages throughout the village.
Then I'll just pull it down, Johnny. Simple.
No, you shouldn't do that. You can get shocked. You should call Greenidge at 237 and they will come and help.
Greenidge, energizing our Grenada.
Right Choice Promotions in association with Investment Migration Agency of Grenada, together with our Riser Credit Union, presents the inaugural Virgin Parish Relay Meet. This is the real mini Olympics, Saturday, March 8th. Lassages playing field in St. David. Relay action featuring the top clubs and schools from across Grenada, competing for cash prizes and more. Come see the nation's best athletes as they prepare for Intercall and Carifta Games 2025. First call to action is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, featuring live entertainment and excitement in the tug-of-war competition. Admission $10 adults, $5 children. Come to Virgin Parish, St. David on Saturday, March 8th for the Virgin Parish Relay Meet. Come share in the excitement and speed and see you there.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're taking a look ahead at Budget 2025. Gentlemen, I know we are dealing with, where we touch a little bit on agriculture, but just one item on agriculture before we move away from agriculture and just get into some of the things that we'd want to see in 2025 budget. MNIB. We should have had a new entity June 2024, according to the last budget. We don't. Anyone has any information on where we are with what this new look replacement for MNIB will be? Sorry?
Could I speak last?
You can speak last, but I think the silence. Anything?
Well, should be told, I really don't have an answer for this because, as I said, I know there was a serious push to I don't want to use the word revamping, but rebranding and putting out something that is different and more reflective of what the needs are today. But up to last Saturday, I've been to NIB, and it's the same old MNIB. And all they have is just that they have less produce these days, as far as I see, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing with MNIB, sadly, is that MNIB has been in dire straits for quite a while. And I am not sure how government plans to ameliorate the situation, but I'm looking forward to some kind of redress, not just for the institution itself, as it's something that we can say we have, as Bishop fought for that, but not just that, but it's the farmers as well and the various other creditors. So I don't have much to say on that, except I am hoping for the best, and I am optimistic.
So we hope that we hear something on Friday on the MNIB. Chris?
It has been a failure for the June revamping of it, because the government was too quick to rush into looking at MNIB as a drain on the public purse and not understand what needs to be done to fix it. MNIB must be a feature in our economy to protect farmers. When in COVID, when farmers had nowhere to send their produce, MNIB is who took it and gave to the institutions and so on, and gave farmers an outlet. So it is necessary. The model that MNIB works on, with fresh produce from farmers, cannot survive, make a MNIB profitable with its various branches throughout. The model has to change. There was a move to change it, because the reason they're getting to sugar and flour and all of that is to support the model that the farmers and selling produce to MNIB at the volume that farmers sell could never sustain a MNIB. Never, because farmers always have issues with production. Now you're getting tomatoes, you ain't getting 2 months from now. Same thing with cucumber and so on and so on. That inconsistency could never support a model where farmers alone will have an MNIB profitable. So you must find something to augment it. And that is the problem. The government didn't take time to understand how to fix. Now they have put in a sort of fix with the finances. That's why it's still open and it's still working. And the issue of producing MNIB is not MNIB problem, it's farmers and what they could supply. You might argue the price, right? But at the same time, farmers wouldn't plant a plot of sweet potato and only get 10 pounds. They will plant to get a few hundred pounds. When you go to MNIB or the other restaurants and so on can't take it, it's MNIB that to take it. Even though that 5 cents a pound less, but farmers is ensured that there is income. MNIB must be a permanent thing on our radar as it relates to agriculture and farming. There's no choice with that.
All right. Viewers and listeners, of course, you can weigh into the conversation, 440-1252. That's the number. You certainly can do that. The Minister of Finance spoke of getting a loan for capital investment to the tune of some 700 million or thereabouts. One, your thoughts, but what are some of the areas you'd like to see capital investment in 2025?
I'd say educational institutions, TVET, let's bolster that. Let's take it seriously, not just skills in the sense of like carpentry or whatever, but business skills, operational management, project management skills. Those are skills that are in demand. Digital literacy, let's bump that up. And I think those are critically important for our economy and where we intend to go if indeed we care about digital transformation, ICT leading and all of that. So I would encourage those emphases. And also saying, I know there have been some, concern about the funding. And I think, it's well known that the financing is not as important as the return on investment. So I just want our nation to know that financing is important. Yes, be concerned about where the money is coming from, but it's not as important as the mechanism through which you can say, okay, I'm going to pay this debt back sustainably, if indeed it's debt, or whether it's grant financing or so on and so forth.
Okay.
This is a short answer for me. I would say healthcare, agriculture / agro processing, and education education. I think these three has to be the main emphasis that will drive our economy.
Jonathan?
I was thinking the same. I was thinking agriculture, health and wellness, education, but we could also chip in tourism as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, I will answer you differently. 700 million is increasing the debt based on what the minister said. They're going to the East Caribbean Securities Exchange, issue treasury bills, etc., etc.
Right. That was one form of raising the funds.
One form of raising the funds. The budget for 2025 on Friday is going to be a deficit budget. Mm-hmm. It has not been we have not seen a deficit budget in many years until the last NDC government with Nazenberg. This deficit budget, they're saying they have the money to finance the deficit. We ain't sure. It's going to be through loans or whatever. But what is stunning in this 2025 presentation is funds from CBI is moving from 540 plus million to 140.
Right.
Almost a 400 million drop. And that needs to be explained because that used to help government with the recurrent budget and the surpluses. Now we're going into a deficit. So I hear us talking about where we want to do and 700 million for loans and whatever. They have said that construction is going to lead the sector leading for 2025, followed by tourism, followed by, to some extent, services, education services, and agriculture as usual last, and of course CBI. Now, if CBI is underperforming so significantly, the issue is, do we get that 700 million to give us a capital spend that we want? Because in a deficit budget, your recurrent takes priority. Okay, you have to pay salaries, you have to pay police, you have to pay everybody, etc., etc. But your capital budget is constrained if you don't get the funding in time. Getting the funding through grant is not easy. The paperwork, the time it takes. Now, NASA took 6 years to get a GCF funding in place. Through paperwork. They got approval quickly, and then the paperwork takes them 5-6 years. So, yes, you have grant funding all there, but it's how to get it and in a timely manner. Loan is the shortest time to get, but then it impacts the loan to GDP ratio that the IMF wants you to keep under control. So, government is constrained. In a deficit budget, your capital projects tend to suffer. Because if you don't get the funding in time, if CBI is underperforming, the issue is how do we effectively get the capital budgets that we plan, whether it's health, whether it's the police, whether it's security. And by the way, our Prime Minister just came out from a CARICOM meeting. Security was a big area highlighted. Education was a big area highlighted because of the World Bank report. And of course, the other area I think was, let me see, I think is, what those are the areas that came out of the CARICOM report. Oh, climate resilience.
Climate resilience. Mm-hmm.
And what is going to happen there, because we need to ensure that our countries, and on that climate resilience, you know, Colin, when I'm looking at this thing here and the budget and what is thing in the Greenidge, for example, if we're talking about climate resilience, sea level rise. Most of the road that we're driving on the Greenidge is on seawater, under seawater. Mm-hmm. Right? That wall around the Greenidge is absolutely porous. They have businesses on the Greenidge that are pumping water 24/7 out of the foundation. Right? If we don't deal with the Greenidge, and we had a project years ago about the Greenidge, a nice walk around, come right, wrap around the tunnel and so on. If we don't get funding to deal with that, just know we can't drive on the Greenidge. And I ain't seeing that here in what they talk in the capital budget and climate resilience. If we talk in climate resilience and we talk in sea level rises, with all the other issues of climate, the Greenidge have to be prioritized. No, they can't wait. You understand? I ain't seeing that here for 2025. So what came out of CARICOM, climate resilience, education, crime and security, and so forth. So those are the major areas. The foreign policy shift, moving south-south trade in Africa is a good thing. Yes. The Prime Minister is moving in that direction because he can depend on Trump 2.0 because of all the things he's making now, so he had to move. So that is some of the areas where, for me, from a private sector hat, putting on a private sector hat now, I haven't heard of any fiscal changes, whether taxes going up, rate going up, or it's staying the same. It would appear from the initial viewing that I'm seeing that it will stay the same. But again, when you look at what they did with property tax and the revaluations, the question becomes when they put that in. If they revalue a property to twice the value it is now, and they keep the rate the same, your tax gone up.
Yeah, and that is to kick in 2025.
Right. So right here they say, but when you look at the figure they propose for property tax in 2025, it's basically flat.
Yeah.
For what they expect.
But the value, as you said, the values may have gone up, even if the rate remains the same, which means out of pocket you're increasing in terms of your own payments.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the CBI. Can we continue to, well, and Chris spoke to it, and I just need you gentlemen to weigh in. We have the Trump effect, we have the gold card conversation, and we have an underperforming CBI. The projections from 2023 to 2024 decreased. 2024 to 2025, we can anticipate a decrease. Whether it's the same magnitude or not, we'll hear. Where can we turn with this challenge?
Yeah, I think, CBI is quite complex. One of the things I like to look into is the regulatory aspect, and I would just like to speak to that because naturally regulations are discriminatory in the sense that whichever minimal or incremental regulation you add, someone's gonna not gonna like it, and as a result, it's gonna take away sales. Just like price is a discriminatory factor, regulations can be, and so people, and also we had the ban on Russian applications as well. So the situation is multifaceted. There's many different factors affecting, just like, okay, it's easy to say, oh, revenues dropped, but what's causing that? The issue is we have made steps in the right direction, having a joint initiative with some Eastern Caribbean countries to have a harmonized framework, and that's going to do well for us.
But everyone seemed to have stepped away, like every other thing, CARICOM.
Yeah.
We agree on the framework, but we're not enacting.
The implementation, we have challenges with that. So I do agree, obviously, we have challenges with togetherness when it comes to implementation, but it's a step in the right direction. FATF, OECD has been telling us we need to do that for years, and we finally did it, and so people are not going to be happy with that, just kind of broadly speaking. But we need to push forward because regulation is good if those regulations are well targeted, well consulted, and if they're gonna improve the
what we would like to see happening with tourism. It has been a solid economic earner. It wasn't a feature of the 2024 budget. I'm not saying that it was ignored, but it certainly wasn't a feature of the 2024 budget statement. Let me be clear on that. What we would like to see by way of investments in tourism to ensure its continued growth?
Well, when it comes to tourism, I would really like to see us start redefining what our tourism product is. I know, we sell, sun, sea, sand, we have cruise ships coming in here, but I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's just so much more that we could, for instance, the ecotourism. We have Greenidge, we have all these rainforests. I've been hearing talk about developing zipline, initiatives for people to spend more money, more value-added products, so people could spend more money when they come to the country, right? I know there's some initiative happening with the Fort George. I'm hearing it's going to be turned into some restaurants, and so which could be a nice spectacle, and maybe some way we could bring in some more revenues. But I just think infrastructure-wise, we need to do more where tourism is concerned. It can't just be about take some visitors off a ship, bring them to see the falls, bring them to see, and we have to get people to spend as much money as they can when they come to this country, right? And we can only do so if we expand the scope and what we offer people, and it can't just be about sea and sand.
Okay.
As you would say, the money's are in people's pockets, so you have to pull the money out of their pocket. What I would like to see in terms of tourism, we know that tourism is one of our biggest GDP generators, contributing to our GDP. We see what happened in COVID with tourism, but I would like to see in terms of the facilities and in terms of the improvement in terms of selling Grenada. For example, we have the job, we have the short nave, Eco, Whiling Jam. We have all these kind of amenities that we could sell, not just around carnival time, but year round, Belmont Estate and all these other amenities we could sell to people to say, well, hey, this is Grenada, this is what we are about, and this is what we are doing. I would like to say that I think Grenada is more comprehensive in terms of our vegetation, more than other Caribbean countries, and they are actually doing better than us in certain aspects. So I think I would like to see Grenada develop. So
you're saying that countries that you know to be flat have zip lines, and Grenada that's among us does not?
No.
I'm not scared to call it in, because there's zip line in Barbados, there's zip line in Antigua,
exactly.
And they're known to be flat.
Exactly. We have things like the Golden Falls and all these other things we could sell, definitely.
Yeah, I think history needs to repeat itself in the sense that Bishop talked about sociologically relevant tourism. That is one of the most fascinating ideas that he had for me. You're not selling sun, sea, sand. You're selling, and not even selling is the right word, but you're presenting Grenada and Grenadians, right? So even if it's a tour that's not going to a specific site, but it's going, and you see a Grenadian putting on a pot on the side of the road, and this is Grenadianness, this is Grenada. And I think if we market and we allow companies to come in and just have these massive capital investments, that's basically really just a secluded kind of venture. And people come and they spend a whole 2 weeks in a resort and they never leave the island. It's just a fraction of people that leave the cruise ships, a fraction of people that leave the resorts. But if we say that Grenadians, just by us existing, we have something to offer, I think that's what Bishop had in mind. And it's not just saying, okay, let's just build a nice little ecotourism spot there and then put a zip line there. Ultimately, people would still go to these spots. But if we empower the craftsman to say, you have something to offer, and it's not the product, it's you. I think this idea of tourism is everybody's business, we need to tweak that. Tourism in itself is not really everybody's business, because not everyone makes profit from it. What we need to say, tourism, sociologically relevant tourism, that is inculcating that national consciousness, that national identity, that is everyone's business, and everyone can participate. That's really what I have to say about that.
Push back on you on that. I believe that is apt. It is everyone's business. Why? Tourism is not only about the projects and the tours and so on. And at that level, it becomes everyone's business, because the first contact with the visitor and how they interpret that contact is key to whether they come back to the destination. What sells Grenada? Pure Grenada is a new thing. But what is pure Grenada about? It's not about the fort and so on. It's about the warmth of the Grenadian. You say it's Grenadianism as what Morris wanted. We are the most warm people in the whole OECS. And we are the most beautiful country if you're coming through via a tourist boat or not, and you're coming into the carnage. So we have that naturally. What we need to do in the tourism, and I think GT have been doing an excellent job selling the country through the pure Grenada brand, because it's not only selling what we do with the forts, it's selling our food, it's selling our culture to the jab and so on. When you come in with a new airline, we used to have those Mokojombi, those fellas on the sticks and so on, and jabs there, so they see, they get a feel. So it is not that they have not been doing a good job on the tourism side. Obviously there are ways to improve, zip line, whatever, and so on. You could also expand, but remember, the biggest constraint we had in tourism for the last 10, 15 years, we don't have enough rooms to get enough airlines. We get in there with Six Senses and these other properties and Intercontinental and so on, and as these come, more airlines will come in, and that's where you make the money, because the airlines, you stay for at least a week or so. The tourist boat is a few hours, it serves the population for a few hours and then they go back. So the real issue is the flights coming in and the stay-over visitors through that mechanism. We have to expand that and grow that and offer a unique experience. That is what it is. That's the Grenadianism they talk about. When we had World Cup 2007, the Australian team will tell you the biggest mistake they made was to put their team in Barbados. When they came to Grenada, we took them to fish, their whole tuna, their whole all kind of thing. They go and drink in a shop in Monjaloo, and a man loses his wallet and they bring bring it back for him the next morning. That is Grenadianism.
Yeah, the point I was making is
And
not
that is what-
necessarily that tourism is not everyone's business. In that sense, is that how much profit are we deriving from that? So you have these designated spots which are certified, which is good. You have certification, and taxis and so on. But the question is that cornman on the side of the road, how much, what share of that is he getting? That's what I'm really getting at.
Greatest trickle-down effect than any other sector. Greatest. Yeah. So that same corner man and the man in Riverside there putting on a pot of oil and them guys stop there and he sell a plate for $10, trickle down right down to the bottom.
But how often are people passing by when they're focused on going to one?
No, they stop. They'll stop in Belmont Estate for lunch. The tours will stop. Cool. They will stop on Riverside Hill.
But I think one of the ways of looking at it is that the product enhancement is important. Mm-hmm. With the product enhancement, there's the greater spend in Grenada. Mm-hmm. Grenadians have more money. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be someone flying in to buy the corn. Mm-hmm. If my disposable income now allows me to buy a second corn, you have now benefited from tourism as well. Okay. So there's a direct benefit and the indirect. And then how we treat with each other and how we treat with our visitors are important. That is now the Grenadian aspect to it, and that warmth that makes us Grenadian. I want us to touch on transportation.
Sorry,
go ahead.
To interject. Before you go there, I want to go back with the young man on CBI. CBI is not as complex as you think. High net worth people, you can't tell them where to put their money. If they decide, yes, we have an embargo with the Russians and you have to manage that through foreign policy, and how you do, because we have a visa component for the US attached to our citizenship that you have to manage. But the Grenada Citizenship by Investment IMA program now has always had very clear directives for security checks and balances and who we get there. And we have backup as well. So if someone gets a citizenship now and 6 months down the road we hear in a criminal activity something, we revoke it. That is under the law. What has to happen with CBI? CBI has to get more efficient internally and otherwise in processing, and CBI needs to become not an arm of government but a statutory organization of its own right so that it can facilitate what it needs to facilitate. So it is not as complex as you may imagine because we have good rules and regulations.
But I think the numbers have said that we have improved significantly in terms of the efficiency. When you look at the processing of applications, certainly within 2024, that has increased remarkably. We probably have to look at where we market and how we market at this point as we reposition our IMA program.
That is happening as well. They go and promote CBI in not the traditional countries anymore. China, Africa, a lot of countries in Africa.
North America can very well be a target.
North American too.
Correct, because they're now on our top 5, I believe, list. For the first time. So that's something that makes sense.
FATF and all of these organizations I speak about, they don't harass the US for their program. They don't harass Canada for their program. They don't harass England for their program. All of them have programs. You could buy citizenship in Canada for 200 or something thousand Canadian, and you get all the benefits of a Canadian. So it is no different to ours. They try to say, for small countries like you, I don't want to teach you how to fish. I will give you fish till you're dead. And that is the principle I have to understand as a young man. When you're here, they come to Parliament, you're parliamentarian. AMTI and AML rules, and they put in all these regulations. You go in the US, it takes you 5 minutes, or Canada to open an account. You come in Grenada, it will take you 3-4 days. Why? Because they have insisted that we do rules. We are high-risk jurisdiction. Through ECCB, all the banks have to follow all these laws, because we never push back. Because if you push back, they tell you they're cutting your foreign exchange, what is the terminology now, where you have to go to a foreign bank in the US to draw correspondent bank relationships. Yeah. That is how we operate, these guys to us. So we and you young people have to find a way to change that as we go forward. You can't accept everything that they give you. Now when they put these regulations in, they never give you money to deal with it. We have to find the money to implement all these things. Hence the reason the fees in the banks go up as they're going up. The amount of things they had to pay for that ECCB is insisting that they do because of what these guys want. Who paying for it? You have to pay for it. Down the road when the bank puts it, if the bank can put it in, they lose their corresponding relationship. that is how this world is and where we go in regulations and what they want.
All right.
Sorry, Colin.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to get on to transportation. Chris mentioned the carnage. Whether we're talking roads or we're talking movement of people, there's a pilot project getting children to school, which I absolutely love seeing happening. But transportation, what type of investment would we like to see 2025 budget?
Well, I guess everybody here know I'm from the wharf. I didn't say carnage, I'm from the wharf, right? Yes, that is carnage and its environs, right? And that is something in particular, Allie brought it up, that is I'm really passionate about, the carnage. It needs to be upgraded. But more on the transportation part of it is that as I traverse the carnage every single day, I look at people, especially on the St. David's Road. It's lines along the road just waiting for buses, right? And I don't know how. It could be a bit controversial because some of the times I feel as though we need to have a public bus service, right? Where we no longer...
No controversy that much. Go ahead.
No, well, it would be controversial because I remember I was on this program, right? Mm-hmm. When we was talking about the same rolling out of the pilot program for the school bus program. And a schoolmate who is a bus driver reached out to me and he said, telling me, I don't know, there's some other underlying thing that I don't know about and this and that, and they have other motives. And so I know there would be busmen that figure, okay, this is not good for them, right? But in my estimation, I find by now busmen should have come to a place where we say, okay, it's a business I'm running, right? I cannot just run a route for myself the entire day, so I may have to employ somebody else to do two. So in the absence of being able to take on these initiatives, the state have to step in, I think, and put in a public bus.
So we expect to see empowerment of the Transportation Commission to ensure the efficient movement of people, no matter how that looks.
Of course, no matter what it takes, it has to happen. Because to me, it's unconscionable that at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the night, just to go to Grandance, you see in trouble to get a bus on a carnage.
Which never used to be.
It is crazy. Mm-hmm.
Remember,
and you can't
in the revolution, we had PTSC running alongside the same private busman.
Yes.
And it worked. Why it worked?
Well, and that time, yes, I remember that because then you used to have they had a rotation, so you had a 9 o'clock bus passing a 10 o'clock bus, so it worked before. We never had a problem in it then. Why we having a problem with it now? Transportation is such a critical thing for us in this country. Mm-hmm. It affects restaurants. Yeah. It affects employees moving back home when they work late. It affects a young man like him who quoting a young woman in St. David's and he wants to take her out to dinner, and he know the bus running 7 and he get one for 9 o'clock. Yeah. So he could go because he's sure he's going to get bus to go back home.
Reliability is talking about.
That's right. That's right.
Reliability of the bus service.
That's right. So it is not about whether we have a choice. We don't have a choice. We have to move school children, and our parents of these school children who are less than cannot afford to pay the current bus fares. They have to get a way to get relief. And a public bus service alongside the private bus service is what has to. You're working in Trinidad, you're working in Barbados, you're working in St. Vincent. Yeah. Why you can't work here?
Yeah, I'm 100% for that, and I really would like to see some more emphasis put on making sure and happen. And as you say, it needs to happen now. It's more sooner than later.
All right, we're out of time, so let's just get some closing comments from each of you. I will start off with my newbie and then move to the more experienced contributors to Beyond the Headlines. So, Kunta-Kinte, your closing comments as we look forward to the 2025 budget.
Yes, it was a pleasure to be here. It was really good hearing the different perspectives and just kind of reflecting and projecting on the budget 2025. I expect that we need to have more transparency. The recent Nobel Prize winners for economics, they said one of the things that causes nations to fail or to be prosperous is really the governance structures and the institutions they have in place. Can people be accountable to each other from a grassroots level all the way up to government, private sector, and all of that. So I think we need to have more private-public partnerships going forward, especially as it relates to the transportation. I think if we have that niche mesh, that real tight-knitted approach towards development, I think we'll get far. And I think as it relates to education, emphasis, we need to address in the Article 4 consultation paper that the IMF did, we need to address that skills gap. And as long as we can go in that direction, then I think our future would be secure, at least for the next 2 to 3 years.
Jonathan?
Well, just I don't know what he's saying. I think we as a people need to be more civic-minded. We need to think of the whole and not just our own personal interests. Yes, our personal interests do matter, but we need to think to be civic-minded. I'm also elated with my colleagues to hopefully we could discuss the budget in Parliament as youths. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. And on a whole, I think the government itself should listen to the youths and listen to a broader perspective in how we can move forward as a nation in terms of the various aspects, in terms of governance, education, skills training, healthcare, and all the other important areas where we see we need improvement as a nation. Okay. So again, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Monty?
Yes, Colin, thanks for having me here again. It has been a pleasure. I would like to close by saying I look forward to this budget, and not just, I know we always put a lot of emphasis into investment in youth. I think we need to start not just homing just on the youth. I think we should start look at persons in the 35 to 55 range, because I think a lot of these people have been tried and tested, and we may see a higher success rate if we start reinvesting in people like that have been conducting business. I think there's something that we need to look at. I need to also point out that the government need to revisit the way we administer taxes with regards to entertainment in this country. All right? When you go to any bank, one of the line items that I take into consideration is entertainment. And I think the fact that we have a policy that we tax people entertainment, I think, I'm not saying that it should never be taxed, but I think the premise on which the tax was set up, which is 15% on top of any entertainment or so, I think it was on the wrong premise and was more about revenue collection, right? So I think it needs to be revisited, because this industry, the entertainment industry, is the only industry that doesn't have a threshold, right? All other business and business entities have a threshold whereby you collect tax VAT on the behalf of the state. So I think is it that the state don't see us as a legitimate business, right? So these things need to be revisited and look at creative ways, maybe for revenue generation, but not, twist the neck of the entertainment industry. So as I said, it's a pleasure being here. There's so much more I could say, but I know we've all that time.
All right. Chris?
We do have a threshold. Huh? You say we don't, we do.
Yes, I know we do. I said for
private companies have a threshold.
Yes,
for taxes. I just letting you know.
No.
Colin, the government recently announced a Ministry of the Blue Economy, which I thought was an extremely positive thing. This ministry is going to be headed by a past PS, and I think we have more water around us than land, and we have not properly exploited the resources in the water. This new blue economy doesn't deal with oil and gas, everything except oil and gas. So that's a positive move, I think, as we move forward. And as another sector, we are blue, we are orange, we are green. I need to get a red. I don't know if that is a possible thing. But yeah, I think that is a positive thing. I think the government is going to have a challenge with this deficit budget as they go forward, and they're going to be presenting on Friday, because it doesn't have a good historical background. We have never done well in a deficit budget. So it leaves to see and what is going to happen with that and their spending. Because if you're presenting a budget of 3-point-something billion or whatever it is, and the spending is close to that, you obviously run into deficit when you try to expand and do the capital projects. So I think they are going to be challenged with that as they present it. And, state security and state stability is critical, whether for tourism or agriculture, the average man on the street. crime and what we do in crime is critical, and we know what has been happening in crime with the movement of weaponry and so on through the borders. And that has to be, in my estimation, a significant part of how they plan to deal with the challenges that's going to come with these criminals, especially with Trump 2.0 saying that he's sending back people to us who have various backgrounds, and how we deal and what we deal in that. So I think those are some of the areas for me I would like to see in 2025. Private sector-wise, if they keep a stable fiscal, it offers us predictability and how we budget going forward, so that's a good thing. And that is something we have to encourage. Of course, we always like the taxes to be less, so we could make more profit. We have no apologies for that, but at the end of the day, the government has to balance what they do, so we understand that as well. So yeah, I look forward to 2025. There's going to be a lot more comments on it when he presents it, and of course a lot more interrogation of the figures and so on. So we see what happens when he does it on Friday.
Christopher Allie, Jonathan Mitchell, Kunta-Kinte, Andall, Monty Greenidge, thank you all so much for joining us, and you, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of this evening's discussions as we look ahead of Budget 2025, while we are, of course, reflected on 2024. I wouldn't ask for any particular relief, but I cry for the salaried employee. They seem to be a target, easy target when it comes to collecting revenue for government. So probably some relief for the salaried employee might be an appeal from my part. Until next time, you'll have a wonderful evening. Thanks once again for being a part of this evening's program. Take good care. Godspeed.